The morning sun shone brightly over the luxurious streets of Ikoyi as Edirin Anaborhi's family gathered around the breakfast table. Her father, one of Lagos' most respected business magnates, adjusted his glasses and looked at his daughter with concern. "Miss Edirin," he began, his deep voice carrying the authority that had built the family's empire over 3 generations, "your father has 2 serviced apartments in Ikoyi, both less than 5 minutes away from the academy. Which one should I prepare for you?" Everyone expected her to choose one of the luxurious residences, but Edirin calmly placed her teacup down and replied, "None." The room fell silent. "None," her father repeated in disbelief. "I will stay in the dormitory," she answered firmly. Her grandfather nearly choked on his coffee. "At least let the driver follow you from a respectable distance," her father insisted. "My jewel, the Anaborhi name survived decades of boardroom battles and political wars. I refuse to let my daughter ride to school on iron scraps." But Edirin smiled. "Daddy, I am going to school, not attending a coronation ceremony." Her father sighed heavily. "School is where children of rich people behave their worst." "Exactly," she replied. "I want to meet people before they meet my money." Her father shook his head helplessly. "If anyone troubles you, call the principal immediately." Edirin laughed softly. "Then the principal should start packing already." Despite all their objections, she remained determined to live as an ordinary student and hide her true identity. Meanwhile, on the other side of Lagos, another family was fighting a completely different battle. In a small apartment where every piece of furniture carried the marks of sacrifice, Zimuzo's parents watched nervously as their daughter prepared for her first day at the prestigious Crownlake Academy. Outside stood a borrowed luxury Maybach, a car so expensive that everyone in the neighborhood had gathered to stare at it. The driver trembled as he handed over the keys. "Daddy, please stop shaking like someone stole Gary," Zimuzo joked, trying to lighten the mood. Her father wiped sweat from his forehead. "This car is not ours. If the owner finds out, I will lose my job. Your school fees alone can swallow my entire salary." Zimuzo adjusted her expensive-looking dress and smiled confidently. "When I marry into money, I will pay everybody back." Her mother sighed. They had sold family land, emptied savings accounts, and borrowed from relatives just to give their daughter a chance at a better future. They hoped education would lift her out of poverty, but Zimuzo dreamed of something different. She wasn't interested in books, she wanted access to wealth, power, and the elite circles of Lagos society. As she stepped into the Maybach, she felt like a queen arriving at her palace. At Crownlake Academy, excitement filled the air. Students gathered in groups, gossiping about the arrival of the board chairman's daughter. "Did you hear?" one girl asked excitedly. "The chairman's daughter is resuming today." Another squealed. "Really? I heard she just returned from abroad." The rumors spread quickly. Everyone imagined a glamorous young heiress with designer clothes, foreign accents, and unlimited wealth. Some students even hoped to become her friend, believing her connections could open doors to future opportunities. In Lagos, one girl said knowingly, "Friendship is an investment." Laughter followed. Suddenly, a girl arrived riding a simple bicycle. The students burst into mocking whispers. "Is this delivery or admission?" one sneered. "Maybe the staff entrance is closed." Another laughed loudly. "Crownlake has fallen. They are admitting bicycle people now." The girl parked quietly and greeted them politely. "Good morning." One of the girls stepped back dramatically. "Please don't greet me too closely with that bicycle." Their cruel laughter echoed across the compound. None of them realized that the girl standing before them was actually Edirin Anaborhi, daughter of the board chairman and heir to one of Nigeria's largest fortunes. Moments later, the sound of a luxury engine drew everyone's attention. The borrowed Maybach rolled through the school gate, sparkling beneath the morning sun. The students gasped collectively. "That must be her," someone shouted. The door opened slowly, and Zimuzo stepped out with practiced elegance. Instantly, admiration filled the air. "Compared to Bicycle Girl, this one is a swan," a student whispered. Zimuzo smiled confidently and waved. "Hi everyone, I'm Zimuzo. You can call me Zima. I hope we learn together and grow together." Her charm worked immediately. Students surrounded her, complimenting her beauty, clothes, and voice. One girl practically worshipped her. "Your voice is so sweet. Even money has a voice." Zimuzo simply smiled and allowed them to continue believing she was wealthy. The attention felt intoxicating. For the first time in her life, people treated her with respect and admiration. Nobody saw the fear hidden behind her smile, the fear that her secret could be exposed at any moment. As the day continued, Edirin quietly observed everything around her. Her close friend Edrina eventually found her and nearly burst into laughter. "This disguise is wicked," she whispered. "You look like you escaped from a moral lesson textbook." Edirin quickly signaled for silence. "Nobody must know who I am." Edrina nodded knowingly. "So you're studying human beings in their natural habitat?" Edirin smiled. "Something like that." Throughout the day, she watched students worship Zimuzo simply because they believed she was rich, while they mocked and ignored her because they thought she was poor. The contrast fascinated her. It confirmed exactly why she had hidden her identity. She wanted to understand how people behaved when money wasn't part of the equation. But deep down, she knew the experiment would not remain peaceful forever. Sooner or later, the truth would emerge, and when it did, Crownlake Academy would never be the same again. The following morning at Crownlake Academy, the tension from the previous day's event still lingered in the air. As students moved between classes, Zimuzo sat beneath a shaded walkway scrolling through her phone while several admirers surrounded her like loyal subjects around a queen. Earlier that morning, her father had called to check on her after speaking with her mother. "Your father said you looked worried," her mother had said gently over the phone. Zimuzo rolled her eyes. "Daddy talks too much." Her mother sighed. "Zimuzo, remember who you are." A confident smile appeared on the girl's face. "That is exactly what I am doing." She ended the call believing she was perfectly in control of her new life. To her, success was simple: look rich, act rich, and eventually become rich. She refused to let anyone or anything threaten the image she had carefully created. Not long afterward, an incident occurred that attracted the attention of nearly every student nearby. Edirin had been quietly walking through the corridor carrying a stack of books when another student accidentally bumped into a display table containing luxury accessories that Zimuzo had been showing off to her followers. One of the expensive-looking handbags fell to the ground. Immediately, laughter erupted. "Are you blind?" one girl shouted at Edirin. "Village girl, can you pay for what you broke?" Before Edirin could respond, Zimuzo raised her hand dramatically. "It's fine," she said with fake kindness. "Let us not embarrass her." The girls around her began praising her generosity. "See Grace," one exclaimed. "She damages your property and you still bless her." Then Zimuzo picked up the handbag and handed it toward Edirin. "Since it has happened, choose one item and keep it." The crowd gasped in admiration, believing they were witnessing extraordinary kindness. But Edirin simply looked at the collection and smiled calmly. Using another person's things to impress people must be exhausting, no? The atmosphere changed instantly. The smiles vanished. The laughter stopped. One of the girls quickly stepped forward. "Excuse me, these are custom orders. The owner's initials are engraved on every product." She pointed proudly at the handbag. "Look. It says EA." Several students nodded. To them, this proved the items belonged to Zimuzo. But Edirin remained unbothered. "Yes," she replied. "EA stands for Edirin Anaborhi." Immediately, mocking laughter filled the corridor. "Please." Zimuzo scoffed. EA means estate allocation. These luxury brands use special codes for private clients. Some students applauded her explanation. Do you know more than the owner? Edirin asked quietly. Zimuzo's face tightened. You arrived at this school yesterday and you're already trying to challenge me. Be careful. Lagos can swallow people quietly. Edirin folded her arms and smiled. Then stopped standing near the mouth. Several students gasped. The boldness shocked them. Nobody normally spoke to Zimuzo that way. The insults became more vicious as the crowd grew larger. Don't form sharp mouth for us, one girl snapped. You came here to chase rich men. Another laughed loudly. Maybe that bicycle is a marketing strategy. Poor but available. The cruel words echoed through the hallway, but before things escalated further, Tenny Achiweze appeared. One of the academy's most respected students, Tenny came from a powerful family and rarely involved himself in drama. Leave her alone, he said firmly. His voice immediately silenced the group. Yet even his intervention only fueled more gossip. Many girls secretly admired him, and seeing him defend Edirin filled them with jealousy. They couldn't understand why someone of his status would pay attention to a girl they considered beneath them. Later that day, as students prepared for afternoon classes, a cheerful girl approached Edirin. Hi, she said warmly. I'm Oritme. Everyone calls me May. Unlike the others, there was no mockery in her voice. I'm Edirin, she replied. May smiled. I know. You caused a small earthquake this morning. Edirin laughed softly. I was only reading bottle labels. The two girls quickly connected. May admitted she attended the academy on a scholarship and understood what it felt like to be judged. If you ever need notes, past questions, or academic help, I can assist, she offered. Thank you, Edirin replied sincerely. For the first time since arriving at Crownlake, she felt she had found someone genuine. The real drama, however, began during the afternoon assembly. The principal stood before the students and announced a fundraising project for a rural community supported by the academy. Beautiful paintings created by children from the village were displayed around the hall. The funds raised today will help provide books, classrooms, and better access roads for these children, the principal explained. Before anyone else could speak, Zimuzo rose elegantly from her seat. I will donate 50,000 naira, she announced. The hall erupted into applause. Her supporters immediately praised her generosity. Leader, one student shouted. Another added, that is how old money behaves. Enjoying the attention, Zimuzo smiled proudly. But then another wealthy student stood up. Make mine 100,000 naira. More applause followed. The competition for attention had officially begun. Suddenly, one of Zimuzo's friends turned toward Edirin with a mocking grin. What about bicycle girl? Will you donate 100 naira or just moral support? Laughter spread across the room. Everyone expected Edirin to remain silent. Instead, she calmly stood up and faced the audience. Charity is not a performance, she said. Whether you give more or less, love is still love. The statement only triggered more ridicule. Convenient thing to say when your pocket is empty, someone sneered. Zimuzo folded her arms confidently. Why don't you show us your own donation then? The hall became completely silent as all eyes turned toward Edirin. She looked at the paintings displayed around the room and spoke with remarkable calmness. I will purchase all the paintings. Murmurs spread through the audience. Then she continued. 10 million naira today. In addition, the Anaborhi Foundation will fund 2 classroom blocks and repair the access road leading to the community. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Then the hall exploded with laughter. 10 million, one student shouted. From where? Another laughed. Call the person now. Let us see. Zimuzo leaned back confidently. I am giving you one chance to apologize before you disgrace yourself. Without changing her expression, Edirin removed her phone and dialed a number. Uncle Tobo, she said calmly when the call connected. Please send 10 million naira cash to Crownlake Academy, classroom B3, immediately. The entire room burst into laughter. One student pointed at her and said, if money enters this class today, I will answer your surname. Edirin smiled. Please don't. I don't need useless relatives. The room erupted again. Some students called her crazy. Others whispered that she had finally lost her mind. Then, less than 30 minutes later, a school administrator hurried into the hall looking pale and breathless. The room fell silent as he approached the principal. Miss Edirin, he announced nervously, the 10 million naira has arrived. Shock swept through the hall like a thunderstorm. Students jumped to their feet. Some thought it was a joke. Others demanded that the money be counted. Even the teachers appeared stunned. Zimuzo's confident smile disappeared completely. For the first time since arriving at Crownlake Academy, she looked afraid. Desperate to regain control of the narrative, she quickly laughed and crossed her arms. So Tenny is generous, she said loudly. Don't mind her. Men spend this kind of money when women know how to behave. The insult hung heavily in the room. But Edirin's response came instantly. Money earned by selling dignity still smells dirty. Gasps filled the hall. Zimuzo's face darkened. Then why are you choking on it? She fired back. Before the argument could continue, the administrator interrupted. Miss Edirin, the academy needs a name for the receipt. Should it be a parent, a foundation, or an anonymous donor? Edirin answered calmly. Anonymous for the public record. For the internal record, write Anaborhi Foundation. The moment the words left her mouth, the atmosphere changed again. Several teachers exchanged nervous glances. One teacher nearly dropped her pen. Anaborhi Foundation, she repeated carefully. Is there a problem? Edirin asked politely. The teacher quickly shook her head. No. I just thought. She stopped speaking. Deep inside, she had assumed Edirin was poor just like everyone else. Around the hall, whispers spread rapidly. She said Anaborhi Foundation. Anybody can say foundation, another student argued. But the money came, someone else replied. Yet despite all the evidence, Zimuzo refused to accept reality. Use your brains, she snapped at her followers. The money came from Tenny's family. She's using his money to create mystery. Some students wanted to believe her, but doubt had already entered their minds. As the assembly ended, May watched everything quietly. For the first time, she realized there was far more to Edirin than anyone knew. Meanwhile, Zimuzo stared at her rival from across the hall. The foundation beneath her carefully built lie had begun to crack. And somewhere deep inside her heart, she feared the truth she had been running from, the possibility that the bicycle girl she mocked every day was actually richer, stronger, and far more powerful than she could ever imagine. The shocking 10 million naira donation remained the hottest topic at Crownlake Academy for days. Everywhere students gathered, in classrooms, cafeterias, corridors, and dormitories, the conversation always returned to one question: who exactly was Edirin Anaborhi? While some students admired her generosity, others remained suspicious. Zimuzo belonged firmly to the second group. As she sat with her loyal followers during lunch break, one of the girls shook her head in disbelief. Still, 10 million naira will build something, she admitted reluctantly. Zimuzo folded her arms and smirked. And one scandal can destroy it, she replied coldly. Across the campus, Edirin paid little attention to the rumors. Instead, she was focused on fulfilling the promises she had made during the fundraiser. When school administrators informed her that the classroom project and road construction would require board approval and technical surveys, she simply nodded. Send the survey report to Uncle Tobo, she said calmly. He would dispatch engineers by Monday. The teachers exchanged surprised glances. Engineers. Most students donated money for applause. Edirin was already organizing construction plans. To her, helping children wasn't about publicity. It was about results. The children need roads, she said quietly, not applause. A few days later, excitement swept through the freshman class when invitations were announced for an exclusive weekend gathering at Lako Archery Club, one of Lagos' most prestigious recreational centers. Attendance was by invitation only, and many students considered it an opportunity to mingle with wealthy families and influential individuals. During a discussion among friends, one student announced proudly, "Freshers' private hangout this weekend. Rich crowd. Proper networking." Zimuzo immediately brightened. This was exactly the type of environment where she thrived. "Archery?" Edirin asked casually. "You play?" one of the students asked Zimuzo. She tossed her hair confidently. "In Europe, I trained with professionals." Several students gasped in admiration. "Of course you did," another girl said, practically worshipping her. Zimuzo continued the performance effortlessly. "I didn't bring my gear, though." One of her admirers quickly offered a solution. "We can buy gloves, jackets, anything you need." Zimuzo smiled dramatically. "The bow is the issue." Then she lowered her voice. "No need. I have a custom collector's bow. My butler will send it." The lies rolled off her tongue as naturally as breathing. Unfortunately for her, the so-called collector's bow was not hers at all. That same afternoon, disaster arrived unexpectedly. Students were gathered near the academy entrance when a middle-aged woman carrying a food flask appeared at the gate. Her face glistened with sweat from the Lagos heat, and concern filled her eyes as she searched for her daughter. "Zimuzo," she called warmly. "My child, I made the special soup with extra crayfish. You have not eaten since morning." The students turned toward the voice. Zimuzo froze. The color drained from her face instantly. "Oh," one student whispered. Another laughed. "Who is this woman calling your native name like village announcements?" Panic flooded Zimuzo's heart. She rushed toward her mother and lowered her voice. "What are you doing here?" she hissed angrily. "Did I not tell you never to come near these streets?" Her mother looked hurt. "I only wanted to bring food. Since your father dropped you here, my mind has not rested." Instead of gratitude, Zimuzo's face twisted with embarrassment. "Your mind should have stayed in your kitchen." The woman held out the flask timidly. "Just eat small, then I will go." But Zimuzo's fear of being exposed overwhelmed her completely. "Do you know what I am building here?" she snapped. "Do you know the caliber of people I stand with?" Tears began forming in her mother's eyes. "One look at your greasy face and everything I have worked for is finished." The words struck the woman like physical blows. Her hands trembled. "These greasy hands paid the deposit for the room you sleep in," she replied quietly. "Poverty is not a curse, my daughter. We can rise cleanly." But Zimuzo had become consumed by her obsession with status. "Cleanly," she laughed bitterly. "Look at you. 20 years in Lagos and you still smell of wood smoke and cheap oil. You look like a curse." Several students looked away uncomfortably. Even they felt the cruelty had gone too far. Her mother wiped tears from her cheeks. "But I raised you." Zimuzo's expression remained hard. "I did not ask you to bring me into this world just to sell akara outside my school gate." The confrontation attracted a crowd. Edirin happened to arrive just as Zimuzo's mother lost her balance and stumbled. Immediately, Edirin rushed forward. "Auntie Faye, are you okay?" she asked gently while helping the woman stand. "I am fine, my dear," the woman replied weakly. "I only slept." Seeing Edirin assist her mother enraged Zimuzo further. "Apologize to your mother now," Edirin said firmly. Zimuzo laughed sarcastically. My mother. This woman is a common caterer. She has been stalking my family for years. The lie shocked everyone. Yet before anyone could react, she turned toward Edirin. Because you are poor, you are quick to identify with servants. Her friends immediately joined in. Exactly. Look at Edirin, patron saint of roadside akara. Another girl wrinkled her nose dramatically. Zima, let's leave. The smell is affecting my hair. The crowd laughed nervously, but Edirin's face remained calm. People only make noise when they are too weak to stand on their own ground, she replied. The statement landed heavily. Even Zimuzo's supporters struggled to hide their discomfort. That evening, while the academy settled into silence, Zimuzo gathered with her closest allies in one of the dormitory lounges. Anger burned inside her. That girl is obsessed with me, she complained. She cannot stand that I am above her. One friend nodded eagerly. She's always watching you. Another added, like she knows something. Zimuzo's eyes narrowed. Then we finish her. The group leaned closer. The freshers hang out, she continued. We invite her. One student laughed. She will refuse. No, Zimuzo replied. May will invite her. She trusts him. A wicked smile appeared on her face. What happens there? Another girl asked. Zimuzo's voice became cold. Enough to teach her that reputation is easier to drown than a body. The room fell silent for a moment. Even her friends were surprised by the darkness in her words. Then one girl chuckled nervously. You are wicked. Zimuzo shrugged. No. I am surviving. Saturday arrived, and the Laco Archery Club buzzed with activity. Luxury vehicles lined the parking area while wealthy families mingled beneath elegant canopies. The atmosphere was filled with money, influence, and privilege. As planned, May invited Edirin to join the gathering. When she arrived, whispers immediately followed her. She came for Zima, one student muttered. Another looked at Edirin's outfit and scoffed. Short skirt to an archery event. This girl is always advertising. Someone else laughed. She knows rich boys are here. Edirin ignored them all. She had long learned that people reveal more about themselves than their targets when they insult others. Soon, the competition began. Several students took turns missing targets while pretending to be experts. Then someone pointed toward Edirin. Since you're here, play with us. Experience high society properly. She shook her head. I am not interested. The crowd immediately interpreted her refusal as fear. Because you don't know how, someone mocked. Another student raised the stakes. Winner gets 100,000 naira. The crowd cheered. Are you afraid? A voice challenged. Edirin glanced toward a beautiful handcrafted bow resting on the equipment table. Her eyes narrowed slightly. That bow. She murmured. One of the students smiled proudly. Beautiful, isn't it? Edirin nodded. Very familiar. Zimuzo immediately stepped forward. You've probably seen one in a magazine. The irony almost made Edirin laugh. She knew the bow perfectly because it belonged to her family's private collection. Finally, she accepted the challenge. Fine. One round. The students gathered around excitedly. Zimuzo's supporters began making jokes immediately. Please don't embarrass her too badly. Another laughed. Let her shoot first. I don't want my performance to intimidate her. Edirin calmly ignored them all. She stepped forward, adjusted her stance, and drew the string with smooth, practiced precision. Several students fell silent. Her posture looked nothing like that of a beginner. See her posture, one girl whispered nervously. Somebody call an ambulance before the string cuts her hand. Another laughed uncertainly. She's delaying because village people don't learn archery. But before the insults could continue, Edirin released the arrow. The arrow sliced through the air and struck the exact center of the target. 10 points. For the first time all afternoon, absolute silence descended over Lako Archery Club. Then all eyes slowly turned towards Zimuzo. Suddenly, the confidence she had displayed all day began to disappear. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached the shooting line. Behind the crowd, a frightened voice whispered urgently. It was the driver who had secretly brought the bow. Zima, return that bow today, he pleaded. I took it from the trunk. If they discover it's missing, I am finished. And in that moment, Zimuzo realized that the very weapon she planned to use to humiliate Edirin might become the thing that finally exposed every lie she had built her life upon. The atmosphere at Lako Archery Club changed completely after Edirin's perfect shot. What had started as harmless competition quickly transformed into something darker. Humiliation burned inside Zimuzo like fire. For weeks she had carefully built an image of superiority, convincing everyone around her that she belonged among Lagos elite. Yet somehow, every attempt to embarrass Edirin ended with her own pride taking the blow. As students gathered around the target in amazement, whispering about Edirin's unexpected skill, Zimuzo felt the ground slipping beneath her feet. Her hands trembled slightly, but her anger disguised the fear. Go away, she suddenly shouted at the driver who had warned her about the stolen bow. The man looked confused. The wind shifted, she said desperately. There is no wind, he replied quietly. That simple response felt like an insult. You distracted me, she snapped. Several students exchanged uncomfortable glances. Deep down, everyone knew the truth. Edirin had simply outperformed her. The more the crowd praised Edirin, the more unstable Zimuzo became. She planned this, she yelled, pointing accusingly at her rival. She always plans disgrace. Some of her followers nodded nervously, eager to stay on her good side. Then, in a moment of pure rage, Zimuzo shouted words that shocked even her closest friends. Throw her into the water. The laughter around the club instantly died. One student stepped forward. Zima, don't be foolish. But she was beyond reason. Take pictures. Post it everywhere, she screamed. Let Crownlake know what happens to girls who insult their betters. A few of her loyal supporters hesitated, unsure whether she was serious. Others looked genuinely frightened. The situation had escalated far beyond school rivalry. Before anyone could act, a firm voice cut through the tension. Stop. Everyone turned. It was Tiniola Achewa's. His presence alone commanded respect. Coming from one of Lagos' most influential families, Tiniola rarely interfered in petty conflicts. The fact that he had stepped forward immediately made people nervous. This is too much, he said coldly. Zimuzo's supporters immediately became defensive. Mr. Tiniola, with respect, Edirin insulted Zima. You cannot offend everybody because of this girl. Tiniola's eyes darkened. I can offend an entire graveyard if it stands between me and her. The statement silenced everyone. Another student tried to provoke him. She's not worth it. She sleeps around with rich men. The insult had barely left his mouth before Tiniola took a threatening step forward. Say one more word. The warning carried enough weight to make several students back away instantly. The tension nearly exploded when one of Zimuzo's associates called for backup. You think only you have people, he shouted before dialing his phone. Moments later, a large security man known as Dogo appeared. Thank God you're here, the boy said. Handle this idiot. Before things could escalate further, another voice interrupted. Young Master Tiniola. Everyone turned toward the older man approaching from a black SUV. It was one of the Achewa's family's senior security officers. His presence immediately changed the mood. Everybody here leaves. Now. The authority in his voice left no room for argument. One of the guards leaned toward Tiniola. Give me permission to end this nonsense today. Tiniola shook his head. No. He wasn't interested in revenge. He was interested in protecting Edirin. A few minutes later, after the crowd had dispersed, Tiniola and Edirin sat alone near the waterfront. The evening sun reflected across the calm water while distant laughter echoed from other parts of the club. Tiniola still looked furious. They ordered people to drag you into the water, he said. Edirin nodded calmly. I know. I was there. He stared at her in disbelief. Don't joke about this. She smiled slightly. I'm not joking. Then her expression softened. But if you destroy them now, they'll say it's because you're sleeping with me. Or because rich boys can't handle insults. They'll blame everyone except themselves. Tiniola shook his head. Why do you need them to see themselves? Edirin looked toward the water before answering. Because punishment without revelation creates matters. I don't want Zimuzo pitted. I want her mirror clean. The words lingered in the air. Tiniola sighed. You always make strategy sound like mercy. A small smile appeared on her face. Sometimes mercy is strategy. Their conversation eventually shifted towards Zimuzo's family situation. Her mother works near the school gate, Edirin said quietly. She sells food. Tiniola nodded. He had heard the rumors. She looked at her daughter like all her suffering finally had a face. Edirin's expression became serious. And Zimuzo pushed her away. For the first time that evening, genuine sadness entered her voice. That's what scares me. People who become ashamed of love are capable of anything. Tiniola studied her carefully. Most people in her position would have focused on revenge. Instead, she seemed more concerned about understanding why people became cruel. Come home, he said eventually. Let your father handle the school. Edirin laughed softly. If daddy handles it, the lesson ends before the exam. Tiniola rolled his eyes. This is not school, Edirin. She smiled. Everything is school. Especially high society. Their friendship reminded him of childhood. When we were young, you used to hide your sweets to see who would steal them. Edirin laughed. And you always stole them. Tiniola pointed at her. To prove your experiment had results. They both laughed, breaking the tension. Then his expression became serious once more. This time, if anyone touches you again, the experiment is over. She nodded. Agreed. He extended his hand dramatically. Official contract. Edirin shook it. Witnessed by Lagos traffic. The joke made them both laugh again. Unfortunately, their growing friendship only fueled more rumors. Across the academy, students whispered endlessly. Nobody expected Tiniola to appear for her like that, one girl said. Another nodded. That girl has something over him. Meanwhile, Zimuzo struggled to hide her jealousy. Every time she saw Edirin and Tiniola together, she felt her carefully constructed world slipping further away. Not long afterward, another influential figure entered the story. During a private training session at the club, Edirin was practicing archery when a handsome young man approached. That bow isn't balanced for your frame, he observed. She looked up. I haven't practiced in a while. He smiled. May I? Before she could answer, a jealous voice interrupted. Who are you touching? The young man turned confidently. I'm teaching her. Murmurs immediately spread through the crowd as people recognized him. It was Tony Elumalu Karibo, heir to one of Nigeria's largest business groups. Elumalu Karibo Holdings, someone asked. Tony nodded casually. My father's group, yes. Unlike most wealthy young men, Tony wasn't interested in appearances. He was fascinated by intelligence. During their conversation, he quickly realized there was far more to Edirin than anyone knew. By the end of the evening, he found himself genuinely impressed. Before leaving, he handed her a beautifully wrapped package. For you. Edirin looked surprised. Tony, you didn't have to. He smiled. I had to. Beauty should never stand unsupported. Inside the package was an elegant designer accessory worth more than most students' annual tuition. Nearby, Zimuzo watched with growing frustration. A few days later, preparations began for the prestigious Crownlake Academy Gala. The event was famous for attracting politicians, celebrities, business leaders, and even film producers from Nollywood. One afternoon, Edirin's family assistant arrived with updates. Miss Edirin, Chief says this designer piece was created privately after the Paris collection. Only one exists. Edirin barely glanced at it. I have dresses I've never worn. The assistant smiled knowingly. Chief says those are last year's dresses. Edirin laughed. Tell my father fashion will not kill me. The assistant chuckled. He said you would say that. The same day, another announcement arrived. The gala committee confirmed your guest card. Your father also approved your veto authority. Edirin sighed dramatically. He approved too quickly. The assistant smiled. Chief said if they want Anaborhi money, they can survive Anaborhi standards. Meanwhile, Zimuzo overheard part of the conversation and nearly exploded with curiosity. Why did people treat Edirin with such respect? Why did influential men seem naturally drawn to her? Why did powerful people answer her phone calls immediately? Her frustration reached a boiling point when she finally confronted Edirin while examining one of the exclusive gala dresses. That dress looks tired, Edirin commented casually. Zimuzo's eyes narrowed. Meaning? Edirin shrugged. It's been through too many lies. The insult landed perfectly. What right do you have to judge me? Zimuzo snapped. Have you ever worn anything beyond market cotton? Her supporters quickly rallied behind her. Who says Zima needs approval from someone who rides a bicycle? At that exact moment, Tony arrived carrying another expensive gift. For you, he told Zimuzo politely. Her face immediately brightened. Tony smiled courteously. Beauty should never stand unsupported. But before leaving, he glanced briefly at Edirin, and everyone noticed it. The look lasted only a second. Yet somehow, it told a story that made Zimuzo more afraid than any insult ever could. Because for the first time, she realized that no matter how many lies she wore, some people could still recognize the truth when it stood quietly in front of them. The hours leading up to Crownlake Academy's anniversary gala were filled with excitement, luxury, and hidden agendas. Across Lagos, influential families prepared for one of the most prestigious youth events of the year. Politicians, CEOs, investors, celebrities, and even representatives from Nollywood had confirmed attendance. For many students, it was simply a glamorous school celebration. For others, it was an opportunity to secure powerful connections that could shape their futures. But for Zimuzo Nwokik, tonight was much more than a gala, it was survival. Backstage, tension crackled in the air like electricity. Students hurried between dressing rooms while stylists adjusted outfits and makeup artists applied finishing touches. In the middle of the chaos stood Zimuzo, dressed in an elegant designer gown that drew admiring glances from everyone around her. Yet beneath the expensive fabric and flawless makeup, panic gnawed at her heart. Her supporters surrounded her, throwing insults at Edirin as usual. One girl smirked and glanced at Edirin's simple outfit. No offense taken, Edirin replied calmly after another rude comment. Poverty didn't teach you manners either. The statement landed perfectly. Several students struggled not to laugh. Zimuzo's face tightened immediately. Bring my dress, Zimuzo ordered one of her assistants. The girl hurried away while another student mocked. Your dress is trekking from Oshodi. Laughter erupted around the room. Zimuzo ignored it and lifted her chin proudly. That dress is a private Gautier commission, she announced. I saw it in a closed catalogue. The students gasped in admiration. Which rich man bought it for her? Someone whispered. Another sneered in Edirin's direction. Clothes cannot wash a dirty body. The comments grew louder. This is an anniversary gala, not a beauty contest, another girl added. What talent do you even have? Will you ride a bicycle on stage? More laughter followed. But Edirin remained calm as always. I am not auditioning, she replied. The simplicity of her response only irritated them further. The conversation quickly shifted when one of the students noticed a prestigious invitation card resting on the table. The gold seal of Crownlake Academy gleamed beneath the lights. That invitation is for Zima, one girl announced proudly. Of course it is, another replied. Who else deserves center stage? Then a new source of gossip arrived. Keen, one of the Academy's wealthy and overly dramatic students, walked into the room carrying flowers. The moment he saw Zimuzo, he dropped to one knee dramatically. Zima, be my girlfriend. The room exploded with laughter. Even Zimuzo couldn't hide her amusement. Before she could answer, another figure approached. It was Tony Elumalukaribo. Unlike Keen's childish display, Tony arrived with serious business. He pulled Zimuzo aside and showed her several documents. Eco-Atlantic Extension, he explained. Private placement. 1 billion naira now. 10 billion in 3 years if approvals land. Zimuzo's eyes widened. Interesting. Tony nodded. Your father's signature and corporate seal will move the banks. The Anaborhi name gives oxygen to dead concrete. He wasn't talking about romance anymore. He was talking about money. Huge money. I can speak to him, Zimuzo replied confidently. Tony shook his head. Not speak. Stamp. Once the mandate is stamped, the consortium releases bridge funding. After that, everybody eats. Unfortunately for them, Edirin happened to overhear part of the conversation. Tony, she interrupted calmly, that project has a litigation hold. The room fell silent. Tony frowned. Excuse me. The waterfront title is under dispute, Edirin continued. Any bank that finances it will inherit years of legal trouble. A few students rolled their eyes immediately. Look at this girl, one of them scoffed. Now you're a property lawyer. Tony looked irritated. This is a private conversation. It becomes public when fraud enters it, Edirin replied. The word fraud struck the room like a slap. Fraud, one girl gasped. From Zima. You really don't fear God. Another student jumped to Zimuzo's defense. You're just jealous because Zima has a man who can buy your entire street. Edirin's eyes remained fixed on Zimuzo. You've already stolen perfumes, a designer dress, and an expensive bar, she said quietly. Don't add corporate crime to your wardrobe. The insult hit its target perfectly. Zimuzo's face flushed with anger. You hate that I am noble and you are low, she snapped. You hate that everything you dream about comes to me naturally. The anniversary stage, the judges' table, the best men, the opportunities, you want my life. Edirin smiled softly. The stage means nothing to me. Because you can never reach it. Zimuzo shouted. Without saying another word, Edirin picked up the invitation card and held it up. This invitation has my name and the Academy seal. The room exploded. Fake. Printed in Computer Village. Anybody can emboss rubbish. The accusations flew from every direction. One student frowned. Since when did Crownlake choose student judges? Check the forum, Edirin replied calmly. Several students immediately opened their phones. Within seconds, confusion spread through the room. The Academy website clearly listed the judging panel. And there, among respected alumni and board representatives, was a name that made everyone's stomach tighten. Edirin Anaborhi. Judge. Board representative. Special veto authority. The room became silent. Zimuzo's heartbeat accelerated. No, she whispered. Then another student spoke. Wait, she has veto authority. Everyone stared. A veto authority holder could terminate any performance, disqualify participants, and stop live broadcast if rules were violated. Suddenly the bicycle girl wasn't looking so ordinary anymore. Before the situation could escalate, Tiniola entered the room. Immediately, several students rushed toward him. Tenor, thank God you're here, one girl cried. Edirin forged a judge invitation and threatened to veto Zima's performance. Tiniola looked at them for a few seconds. Then he laughed. A deep, genuine laugh. We were only protecting the gala, another student said nervously. Shut up, Tiniola replied. The room froze. I looked for you in the changing room, he told Edirin. I got delayed by a public exhibition of stupidity. The comment triggered laughter from a few students. Tiniola smiled. Then let's leave before it becomes contagious. The room remained stunned as the two walked away together. So, the invitation is real, someone whispered. You people ask too many questions for people who ignore answers, Tiniola replied without turning around. As soon as they disappeared, panic spread among Zimuzo's allies. She has bewitched him. No normal girl gets this much protection. Meanwhile, in a private backstage office, the true danger finally revealed itself. Jolomi and Kenny sat across from Zimuzo while Tony paced nervously around the room. The businessman no longer looked calm. Sweat glistened on his forehead. Edirin is on the judges' table, he said. She's only one vote, Zimuzo replied. Tony shook his head. No. She has board veto. The room fell silent. If she presses that red button, he continued, the live stream cuts immediately. Your performance becomes a disciplinary disqualification. My investors walk away. The project dies. Fear spread across Zimuzo's face. Why would they give that kind of power to a girl who came here on a bicycle? Tony looked directly into her eyes. Because she isn't who we thought she was. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Tony grabbed her arm tightly. Listen to me. His voice was low and dangerous. You're going out there. You're going to perform like your life depends on it. Tony, you're hurting me. My creditors don't send reminders, Zima. The room grew cold. They send men. Nobody laughed anymore. If this deal dies tonight, they won't stop at my office. They know my parents' address. They know my sister's school. The reality of the situation finally became clear. This wasn't just greed. People's futures were hanging in the balance. Kenny leaned forward. We have a backup plan. Tony looked interested. If Edirin reaches for that console, Kenny continued, we upload those cropped sugar daddy photos to the academy server. We destroy her reputation before she can destroy yours. Even Tony hesitated. The plan was ruthless. But desperation makes dangerous people. Meanwhile, outside the office, Edirin stood quietly near the stage entrance watching the crowd gather. She looked calm. Too calm. A calmness that terrified her enemies. She looked so quiet, Zimuzo whispered while staring at her through a window. How can someone so quiet be so heavy? Jolomi smiled darkly. Even the biggest mountain can be blasted open. Then he pointed toward the stage. Get out there. Moments later, an elderly woman approached Zimuzo backstage. It was her mother. She had somehow gained access through the catering team. Zima, she said softly. You look beautiful. Zimuzo immediately frowned. Who is this? She asked coldly. One of the security staff answered. One of the caterers. Tell them backstage is private. The woman lowered her head. The rejection hurt more than any slap. As she turned to leave, she whispered quietly. May the crown you are chasing not cut your head. Then she walked away. The words followed Zimuzo like a shadow. Finally, the announcer stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen. The massive crowd became silent. Please welcome Miss Zimuzo Akachi with a dramatic monologue titled, The Spotlight Illuminated the Stage. The crown I was born to wear. Thunderous applause filled the hall. Zimuzo walked forward confidently. She lifted her head. Her voice echoed through the auditorium. They told her to bow. The audience listened. They told her to shrink. The lights reflected across her face. They told her greatness had a gate, and her name was not on the list. The hall grew silent. But a woman does not need permission from those who inherited chairs. More applause followed. If the world refuses to call her royal, her voice became stronger. She will build her own throne with bleeding hands. The audience erupted. Then she delivered the line that unknowingly revealed the truth about herself. I was not born to kneel. The applause intensified. I was not born to smell of kitchens, gutters. For a brief moment her eyes found her mother standing alone at the back of the hall. And other people's leftovers. The words echoed across the auditorium. And somewhere in the darkness, Edirin slowly lifted her eyes toward the judge's console. Because for the first time that night, the real performance was about to begin. The grand hall of Crownlake Academy remained silent for a brief moment after Zimuzo delivered the final lines of her monologue. The audience erupted into applause, impressed by her confidence and commanding stage presence. Under the dazzling lights, she looked every bit like the queen she desperately wanted the world to see. As she stood there soaking in the admiration, her eyes drifted toward the judge's table. There sat Edirin Anaborhi, calm and unreadable, her fingers resting near the red veto console that held the power to end any performance instantly. One press of that button, and everything Zimuzo had worked for would collapse before hundreds of guests and thousands watching online. You were born to be seen, one of the judges remarked as scores were being tallied. Across the table, another official glanced toward Edirin. If you press it, she's finished tonight. Edirin continued watching the stage quietly. I know, she replied. The official waited, expecting her to act. Instead, Edirin leaned back slightly. And if the world calls her nothing, she said softly, she will answer with a crown so bright their blindness will burn. The judge frowned. Why? Edirin's eyes never left the stage. Because revenge is easy. Revelation lasts longer. The words lingered in the air. Several minutes later, the results were announced. Zimuzo Akachi, you passed. The crowd applauded. Relief flooded through Zimuzo's body. Yet strangely, victory didn't feel sweet. The first thing she wanted to know wasn't her score. What score did she give me? She demanded. The event coordinator smiled. Does it matter? You passed. But it mattered. Because deep down, Zimuzo understood what had happened. Edirin had spared her. And somehow that felt worse than defeat. As the gala continued, she sat alone backstage replaying the moment repeatedly. She thinks she can spare me, she whispered bitterly. Tony looked up from his phone. What do you mean? Spare me. Like I need saving. That's not what she meant. It is, Zimuzo snapped. And I rent it. Tony sighed. The conversation quickly shifted back to what truly consumed him. Money. The dangerous Eco-Atlantic deal. The debt hanging over his head. After tonight, people will ask questions, he said. Your name is hot. Investors love momentum. If we move the property deal now, they'll follow the attention. For the first time all evening, Zimuzo sounded exhausted. Can we not talk business for one night? Tony's expression hardened. We are talking about survival. My survival or your debt? Both, if you're smart. The answer stung. For a moment she wondered if Tony truly loved her or simply needed her. Then her anger returned. She has everything. Tony looked confused. Who? Edirin. The name tasted bitter. Then take something, Tony replied. The suggestion lingered in the room. Meanwhile, elsewhere in Lagos, a different conversation was unfolding. Mrs. Faye sat quietly on a hospital bed, her injured ankle wrapped in bandages after the accident near the school. Despite her pain, her greatest concern remained her daughter. The truth will come out, Zima, she whispered during a phone call. There was silence on the other end. What truth? The lie is hungry. Zimuzo laughed bitterly. Then feed it consequences. Her mother closed her eyes sadly. She no longer recognized the girl she had raised. Back at an upscale Victoria Island boutique, Zimuzo continued spending recklessly. This jacket. Those heels. The silver clutch. Wrap them. The sales attendant smiled nervously. You have a fearless relationship with money. Zimuzo smirked. Money fears me. But reality was beginning to disagree. Far away, Tony was making desperate calls. Chief, I told you I need more time. His voice shook. Please don't go to my parents' house. The response from the other end made his face pale. I'll pay the 500 million. Silence. I have a 1 billion naira mandate coming from Anaborhi. Another pause. Then a cold answer. 48 hours. Tony swallowed hard. 48 hours. The line disconnected. Immediately he called back. Wait. Leave my sister out of this. No answer. They know my family. Still nothing. The call ended. For several minutes he sat motionless inside his car. The black Prado parked nearby hadn't moved all day. Neither had the men inside. When Zimuzo later found him staring through the windshield, she knew something was wrong. You saw them, he asked. She nodded. The Prado. Tony laughed nervously. Lagos business. She studied him carefully. The kind that parks outside all day without blinking. Tony didn't answer. Finally she spoke. Those men aren't bankers. His silence confirmed everything. They collect debts for people who don't send reminder emails. The fear in his eyes told her she was right. If I default, he admitted quietly, they'll make an example of my family. The confession shocked her. For the first time she understood the desperation behind his obsession. What am I supposed to do? Tony grabbed her hand. Be who you say you are. What does that mean? Bring your father's seal. The words landed heavily. Stamp the mandate. She pulled away. You want to hide behind me? No, he replied. I want us to win. But Zimuzo suddenly saw the truth. No. Her voice was colder than before. You want my imaginary father to protect you from real men. Tony's expression changed. The silence between them became uncomfortable. Finally he spoke. Love is beautiful, Zima. Then he looked toward the black Prado. But power protects love. His next words cut deeply. If you can't move one document, what exactly are you bringing into this future? For the first time, Zimuzo felt used. Not loved. Used. The following day, Mrs. Faye's condition worsened slightly, forcing Edirin to intervene. When Edirin visited the estate clinic, she found the woman trying to return to work despite her injury. Auntie Faye, who brought you here? I came by bus. You should be resting. Mrs. Faye smiled sadly. I even slept in the kitchen so I wouldn't miss my shift. Nearby, one of the estate managers overheard the conversation. You were meant to report any injury sustained during duty. Fear immediately filled Mrs. Faye's face. Please sir, don't remove me from work. The manager shook his head. Health first. Work can wait. Tears gathered in her eyes. You are kind, Miss Edirin. Then she laughed softly. My daughter says kindness is for people who have money to waste. Edirin sat beside her. Your daughter is wrong about many things. For a moment, Missy's face stared into the distance. When she was small, she whispered, if I cried, she would bring me water with both hands. A tear slid down her cheek. She wanted to be a doctor. Her voice broke. Then she entered places where people measure life by labels. Edirin nodded slowly. Labels fall off. Then her expression became serious. But shame can stick. She immediately instructed the estate management. Bill everything to the estate. The manager nodded. An anti-fair rest for 1 week. The woman tried to protest. Edirin raised a hand. That is an instruction. Unknown to everyone, Zimuzo had already crossed a dangerous line. Late that evening she slipped into the chairman's private study. Her heart pounded violently. Inside the room sat the very object Tony needed. The official Anaborhi corporate seal. 1 stamp. 1 signature. 1 fraudulent authorization. 1 billion naira. As she reached for it, a voice stopped her. Zimuzo. She froze. Standing in the doorway was her mother. What are you doing here? Missy's face stepped forward. I work here. Then her eyes fell upon the seal. Realization flooded her face. What are you doing in the chairman's study? Move. No. The answer came instantly. You want me poor forever, Zimuzo snapped. Mrs. Face shook her head. I want you free. The words pierced through the room. This thing you're carrying. She continued, pointing at her daughter's obsession. It is a prison. Zimuzo laughed bitterly. Free. She pointed around the luxurious estate. You call this freedom? You kneel to people who throw away food worth your salary. Mrs. Faye's voice remained calm. I kneel for work. Then she looked directly into her daughter's eyes. Not for shame. Same thing. No. For a brief second, neither moved. Then Zimuzo stepped closer. Give me the seal. Mrs. Faye refused. If this deal lands, Tony will marry me. Silence. I'll finally enter the family I deserve. The pain in her mother's eyes was heartbreaking. Any family that requires you to steal before they love you. Her voice trembled. We'll bury you alive. Then she reached for her daughter. Zima, please. The desperate plea echoed through the study. My child. But desperation had already won. Moments later, Mrs. Faye fell. The room erupted in chaos. Security rushed inside. Tobo. Edirin's uncle immediately responded. As people gathered around the injured woman, Zimuzo stood frozen. Then her phone vibrated. Tony's name appeared on the screen. She answered. My mother almost died. There was silence. Then Tony asked only one question. But did you get it? The words hit her harder than any slap. You don't even pretend well anymore. Tony laughed weakly. Pretending is for people with time. Then his voice became cold. I don't have time. Zimuzo slowly looked down at the seal in her trembling hand. And for the first time, she realized that the crown she was chasing might already be stained with blood. The atmosphere inside the luxury restaurant overlooking Victoria Island was strangely quiet. The city lights glittered beyond the glass walls while expensive cars flowed through the streets below. Zimuzo sat across from Tony Elumalu Karibo, her fingers wrapped around the crystal glass, though her mind was far away. The stolen corporate seal rested hidden inside her designer handbag, and every second she carried it felt heavier than the last. Yet she forced herself to focus on the future she had been dreaming about for years. Tony reached across the table and squeezed her hand gently. Say thank you, he teased with a smile. A small smile appeared on Zimuzo's face. Thank you. Tony nodded approvingly. When this money comes, we make everything official. The words immediately captured her attention. I don't want whispers anymore, she said quietly. I don't want girls laughing behind my back, saying you're only using me. Tony looked directly into her eyes. I understand, Zima. She studied his face carefully, searching for reassurance. Good. Her voice carried both hope and warning. Make sure you understand. Tony nodded. When this money comes, everyone will respect you. For a brief moment, disappointment flashed across her face. I said us. Tony quickly corrected himself. Us, of course. But something about his hesitation lingered in her heart. Outside the restaurant windows, Lagos continued its endless dance of ambition and survival. In this city, respect often arrived before character. Wealth spoke louder than integrity. Names opened doors long before personalities had the chance to knock. And nobody understood that truth better than Edirin Anaborhi. Across the city, as dawn approached, Banana Island slowly awakened beneath the golden glow of the rising sun. Massive mansions stood proudly behind towering walls. Security gates slid open and shut as chauffeurs prepared luxury vehicles for another busy day. Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, Range Rovers, and Maybachs lined private driveways like polished trophies. The rich and powerful of Lagos were beginning their morning routines. Inside one of the largest estates on the island, a black armored SUV waited patiently beside the front entrance. Nearby, another luxury vehicle idled quietly. A third stood ready as backup. The entire convoy existed for one person. Edirin Anaborhi, the sole daughter of one of Nigeria's most influential business dynasties. As she stepped outside, the household staff immediately straightened. Drivers moved toward their vehicles. Security personnel prepared to escort her. One of the drivers opened the car door respectfully. Miss Edirin, your father says you should take the vehicle today. Another employee added quickly. The roads may be busy this morning. A security officer nodded. We've already prepared the convoy. But Edirin simply smiled. The same smile that always confused people. A smile that suggested she valued things money could never purchase. Far behind the luxury vehicle stood an old bicycle. Its green paint had faded years ago. The frame carried small scratches and dents. The bell barely worked. The saddle showed signs of wear from countless rides. To most people, it looked like junk. To Edirin, it was freedom. Her father emerged from the doorway just in time to witness her walking toward it. Take a car, he called out one last time. The billionaire's voice carried equal parts authority and affection. Edirin paused. Then she looked back and smiled. No, Daddy. He shook his head. You are the only child in Lagos who argues with wealth. A soft laugh escaped her lips. Maybe because wealth always wins the argument. Without waiting for another response, she climbed onto the bicycle. The old frame squeaked beneath her weight. The weak bell rattled as she adjusted the handlebars. Nearby staff members exchanged amused glances. Some smiled. Others shook their heads. None of them truly understood her. Here was a young woman who could own almost anything she desired. Yet every morning she chose simplicity. Not because she lacked options, but because she wanted to remember who she was without them. As she pushed off and began riding toward the estate gates, the contrast was almost unbelievable. Luxury cars worth hundreds of millions of naira stood untouched. Meanwhile, the true heiress of the Anaborhi Empire rode away on an aging bicycle. No designer convoy. No flashing escorts. No public display of power. Just a quiet girl in a simple outfit riding through Lagos like an ordinary student. The morning breeze played with her hair as she pedaled through the streets. Around her, people hurried to walk. Vendors arranged their goods. Downfall buses honked aggressively. Motorcycles weaved through traffic. Nobody looking at her would imagine that she possessed enough influence to change lives with a single phone call. Nobody would guess that board members, investors, governors, and CEOs regularly sought her family's approval. And that was exactly how she wanted it. Because in Lagos, people often measured a person before they spoke. They judged clothes before character. Cars before kindness. Wealth before wisdom. A powerful surname could open a door that integrity should have opened first. Edirin had spent years watching that happen. That was why she chose the bicycle. That was why she chose simplicity. Because every day she rode through Lagos disguised as ordinary, she learned something priceless. She learned who respected people and who only respected money. And as the rusty bicycle disappeared into the morning traffic, the city continued moving around her, completely unaware that one of Nigeria's richest daughters had just passed by unnoticed once again. The empire rode quietly that morning. Not inside a luxury convoy, but on two squeaky wheels carrying a secret that would soon shake Crownlake Academy to its foundations.